notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States. So
now, in addition to the 287 layoffs the company announced today, there have been more than 900 in the Quad Cities in just the past several months.
We're going to take other countries' jobs. We're going to bring thousands and thousands of businesses and trillions of dollars in wealth back to the good old USA.
No, we're not going to let you bring, this cab, this top of a tractor in from Mexico. We're going to charge you for that. It really only, raises the price for Deere consumers.
With a 30% drop in net sales year over year and income per share going down to $3.19, it's no surprise that John Deere is facing immense troubles due to the tariffs enforced by the Trump administration. The president announced plans to impose a 200% tariff on every equipment built by Deere outside of the U.S., and companies are sweating because there's nothing to suggest the tariffs will stop there. This isn't a business dispute. This isn't personal. It's a way of gaining more clout with the U.S. audience, and it's the beginning of a political showdown. The president believes his policies will outshine a multinational brand trying to survive in the market. But many experts believe it could cost the farmers and the economy itself in return. Deere's already on a downward spiral, with the latest earnings showing a large dip in sales. And that's a trend continuing from last year and the year before. The company has been synonymous with American culture and traditions for nearly 2 centuries. And while it bleeds out, Trump's threat could only make the wound deeper. The president, though, has maintained since before he came into power that he won't go easy on John Deere and other companies that follow suit. You might be wondering, what has Deere done to garner such criticism from the president? Well, it's fairly simple. You see, the current administration got votes because of their promise to bring business back to America. He wanted companies to start investing in the country rather than taking their factories abroad. That's why he implemented many tariffs, encouraging domestic companies to produce everything that's imported. And during all this, he issued an ultimatum.
John Deere is going to, and anybody else that does this, because it's hurting our farmers, it's hurting our manufacturing. And if you do that, you're going to have a 200% tariff put on the product that you make in Mexico.
Yeah, that's right. The president vowed to punish companies taking their business abroad because he believes it results in a loss of jobs for Americans and hurts the farmers too. He believes Deere isn't only abandoning American workers, but they're betraying them. It's a strong message and one that resonates very well with the farmers and rural voters, as they've always made up a huge part of Trump's voting base. Now, though, that audience is caught right in the middle. They've been reliant on the fantastic machinery produced by John Deere, but are also angry at the decisions the company is making by taking their business to Mexico. And that's where Trump's politics come in. An average worker is more concerned about putting 3 meals on the table and paying the rent than he is about a war between the Democrats and the Republicans. So, when Donald Trump promises to bring jobs back into the country and announces unprecedented tariffs on companies that are looking to build factories out of the country, everyone listens and cheers him on.
The idea, though, is stirring, of course, some controversy, although some support it as well here. Others say, though, it will make things more expensive for the everyday American.
This is the other side of the story, however. One that not many people think about and one that makes a lot of sense. Not only from Deere's perspective, but from the perspective of the farmers and other local stakeholders. Of course, everyone wants to have access to more jobs in the country, but the problem with imposing massive tariffs to stop companies from taking their businesses out of the country is also a double-edged sword. Imagine the higher prices the farmers will have to pay to upgrade or buy new machinery from John Deere. There are a lot of reasons why this debate is more than just a policy dispute. While Trump wants a return to an American-made era, there are some big problems he'll need to contend with, like potentially losing a company that has been an integral part of the agricultural landscape for nearly 2 centuries. At the end of the day, Deere needs to do whatever they can to survive in an extremely volatile market. Not to mention, the latest policy also risks handing back that market edge to the foreign competitors, because with a 200% tariff, brands like Yanmar and Mahindra could easily compete with John Deere's prices. And no matter what you say about American brands, people will buy cheaper products, especially when the difference in quality isn't that large.
30,000 U.S. workers, and they're really talking about moving like lower margin parts or equipment to their Mexican facility, which quite frankly is a good business decision. Now,
Deere's maintained their stance that this isn't a betrayal. It's simply a smart business decision in an economy where they need to make such decisions to stay afloat. Deere's lobbyists are trying their best to prevent this from happening and are looking at Congress and lawmakers for support. Unfortunately, it looks like they'll be subjected to such tariffs if they do go ahead. The problem is, both sides have said too much to lose. If the president backs down now, it could mean showing his cards early on and potentially losing support from a huge portion of his voting base. Similarly, if Deere backs down and pulls the plug on Mexican investment, then it could mean that no company is safe from political pressure. On the other hand, if they stand firm, it could set a precedent, one that could crumble the Trump administration.
We have had a presence in Mexico since 1952.
They also put out this message, which is extremely interesting, to say the least. You see, they're maintaining that the move to Mexico isn't something that came about in the last few years. Apparently, they've had production setups in Mexico since 1952, and the company has always made decisions best for the company in the long run. It's not a new policy, and it also doesn't mean production in the U.S. would halt.
They went on to say it's not unusual for Deere to consider any number of factors when it comes to leveraging our global footprint as a global business, they say, while building new products in U.S.
Of course, there's another pressing issue that Trump might have overlooked. Even if Deere decides to wrap up production from Mexico and move all their factories back to the United States, that still wouldn't guarantee the return of jobs. You see, over the last few years, traditional workers have been replaced by AMRs, autonomous mobile robots. So moving production back isn't going to restore all those jobs when a major reason behind the layoffs has been a change in their model.
hundreds of jobs out of those 33,000 maybe in the U.S., but they'd probably be doing other things. So that's a benefit for that community.
Yeah.
But on balance, tariffs tend to raise prices, which is okay.
Yes, tariffs can help in protecting a bunch of U.S. jobs, that's definitely true, but they always come with a major trade-off, which is a higher price being passed on to the consumer. But, as far as Trump is concerned, the policy resonates a lot better with people when you're stopping items from coming from Mexico. The reality is anything but. It's just making farmers pay more for the equipment. All those contracts and small-town municipalities will suffer from these tariffs. Ultimately, on balance, these tariffs aren't punishing manufacturers. They're built to withstand certain political anomalies, but what about the everyday buyer? They're the ones getting hit the hardest. At the end of the day, it really isn't about leverage or loyalty. It's all about whether Americans know what protectionist policies really mean for them, and whether they're prepared to deal with the inevitable blowback.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of tariffs. They raise the prices for American consumers.
To make matters worse, even Republicans aren't big fans of Trump's tariff plans. Mitch McConnell might have some controversial takes, but even he couldn't agree with Trump's tariff-heavy approach. He pushed back, explaining that walling off imports isn't the way to go when everyone has seen that it's the volume of exports that helps American companies sell more abroad. In fact, many others are seeing this policy for what it is. No one thinks of it as Deere versus Trump. They see it as free trade versus economic nationalism and business versus politics. But if Trump doesn't have support from his own Republican Party, and many of his voters aren't encouraged by this move, then it might mean that cracks are beginning to show.
Today, we're still forging ahead, over 30,000 Americans strong, 60 sites, 16 states, proud, focused, unshakable. With $20 billion committed to U.S. innovation and raw steel made right here at home, we power the hands that feed, build, and move this country forward.
But over the last few days, the latest development has completely changed the landscape. John Deere announced a $20 billion statement, promising investment within the U.S. over the next decade. It's a big move, and the plan is to remind critics and voters that Deere's staying in America, and they're doubling down on it. Many would read it differently, but John May, the CEO, was blunt about the news. He revealed this wasn't damage control, but rather a continuation of what the company has been doing for U.S. citizens and the U.S. economy since 1837. And it's not hypothetical. These are all real projects based in many different states like North Carolina, Missouri, Iowa, and Tennessee. Some in the media believe that Trump's tariffs have led to this decision, but the communication coming out of John Deere is plain and simple. They haven't turned their backs on American workers. They never did. Ultimately, this is the truth. While Trump plans on imposing tariffs after tariffs, the people having to pay more aren't Wall Street executives or company CEOs. The people who got the short end of the stick here are the small and mid-size operators. They've already been squeezed by rising fuel prices, equipment costs that keep climbing, and extremely volatile markets. The question is, will Trump's master plan only end up hurting him as he loses a major chunk of his voting base? Because the farmers and smaller businesses aren't going to be happy to pay the extra, and companies like John Deere can definitely afford to wait out this administration. So in this battle between political theater and practical reality, it's the contractor in Kentucky and the rancher in Texas who come out worse. This isn't just about headlines, it's about putting food on the table. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to check out our other video of Trump getting roasted and toasted by Jasmine Crockett.